Throughout the late fall and a majority of winter, things have been pretty quiet across the first coast region of Florida. From December to March, we've had multiple prefrontal squall lines that accompanied cold fronts, but these rarely produce severe weather, let alone thunderstorms. The only big weather event I can think of post Hurricane Milton was a winter storm that impacted parts of the first coast in mid January, though I'm going to save that for a different video discussing winter storms in Florida. NWS Jacksonville seemed to take notice of this lack in thunderstorm activity, which was highlighted in the February 2025 climate summary for the climate site in Jacksonville. Here, it is stated that only one thunderstorm was reported in the month of February, when on average we usually see at least two. More notably, however, they point out that since the passage of Hurricane Helene, Jacksonville International Airport, and by extension, much of the First Coast region, had only seen two thunderstorm days. This period goes from October of 2024 to February 2025, and on average, we usually see around 8 thunderstorm days in that time frame. Needless to say, it's been pretty calm around here lately. However, that started to change once March began. On March 5th, another prefrontal squall line passed through the first coast. While not bringing much in the way of thunderstorms, it did bring some pretty punchy, gusty winds. More notably, however, a combination between a stalled frontal boundary, a shortwave trough, and a surface low pressure system developing to our west would all combine to bring widespread rainy and stormy conditions to the first coast on March 9th and March 10th. With this event, much of the first coast picked up 1 to 3 inches of rain, along with many of our local areas seeing thunderstorms. As mentioned a moment ago, a bit of a complex weather pattern was taking shape across our region leading into March 9th and March 10th. A shortwave trough, along with a surface low pressure system, was forecast to move into our area through the evening hours of the 9th and into the daytime of the 10th. At the same time, a stalled frontal boundary was draped across much of North Florida and southern Georgia, running parallel to the Interstate 10 corridor. With the shortwave trough and surface low helping to provide some lift in the atmosphere, along with the stalled frontal boundary helping to focus warm, humid air along it, the stage was set for the potential for prolonged, heavy rainfall across our area. There was some potential for severe weather to occur with this setup, though widespread severe weather was not expected. The Storm Prediction Center had the First Coast region under a marginal risk for severe thunderstorms, with this area extending through much of northern Florida and into southern Georgia. The main threat outlined in the SPC Outlook text was small hail, but when it came to the odds of each kind of severe weather, they were all on the lowest end of the scale. 5% chance for damaging winds and hail, along with a 2% tornado risk. While isolated severe weather events were possible, it was not expected to be the main impact from the storm system. Rather, the primary impact from the storm system was expected to be heavy rainfall. The Weather Prediction Center had much of North Florida under a marginal risk of excessive rainfall, with a pocket of slight risk extending across much of the Interstate 10 corridor. This was the area closest to the stalled frontal boundary, and this is where the heaviest rainfall totals were expected. With this event taking place so early in the year, and consistent cloud cover over much of our region, atmospheric instability was pretty weak. Surface-based Cape struggled to crawl past 250 across much of our area throughout the morning and early afternoon, with mixed layer Cape not faring much better, also reaching around 250 at its peak, area-wide in the afternoon hours. Despite the low instability, wind shear was decently high around our region, with effective shear values ranging from 30 to 60 knots throughout the morning and early afternoon hours, only increasing with time as the surface low and associated trough approached our region out from the west. This wind shear would help bring the potential for a few organized thunderstorms. Lastly, precipitable water values were quite high for this time of year across our region, ranging from 1.5 to 1.8 throughout the daytime hours. This, of course, would help set the stage for heavy rainfall. With all these factors set in place, it was looking like we were in for quite the soaking, with a decent chance of seeing thunderstorms throughout the nearly 30-hour stretch of soggy weather across the First Coast region. Rainfall would begin around the First Coast region starting at 7 a.m. on the morning of March 9th. This activity primarily came from a cluster of heavy rainfall with some embedded thunderstorms, and it was primarily impacting southeastern Georgia. South and along of Interstate 10, a few isolated downpours would pass through, with some rumbles of thunder occurring within them. However, a majority of the heavier activity remained north of Interstate 10 for the time being. Locally in Clay County, we had two early rounds of rain. The first occurred between 6:30 and 7 a.m. as a heavy downpour moved over the northern portions of our county. I was at work that morning, so I wasn't able to record, but I did hear a few rumbles of thunder from the storm and saw some flashes on the top of the storm clouds, but otherwise nothing really notable happened. About an hour later, a more substantial cluster of heavier rain moved through the northern portion of our county again, and overall it covered more ground and it contained heavier rainfall than the previous downpour. But once again, there were some rumbles of thunder and not much else. The main event for the day wouldn't arrive for another 2 to 3 hours, but when it did, it packed quite the punch. Starting at around 8 a.m., a large cluster of thunderstorms, known as a mesoscale convective system, or an MCS for short, was beginning to take shape far to our west. A line of heavy downpours and thunderstorms was seen moving through the northern Big Bend portion of the state, ranging from near Tallahassee in the Panhandle and up into Valdosta, Georgia. As the MCS began to move further into northeastern Florida, it began to take on more of a linear formation, resembling a squall line that you might see on the front edge of a leading cold front. However, while this squall line was riding just along, or at the very least in close proximity to the aforementioned stalled frontal boundary along I-10, this system was not the result of a front moving directly through our area like we had seen many times throughout the winter. As the squall line began to move into the far western counties of our viewing area, the National Weather Service office in Jacksonville began to issue alerts on the approaching storm. At 9:14 a.m., the line received its first special weather statement, which covered 9 different counties in Florida and Georgia. Stated hazards included wind gusts up to 50 miles per hour, half-inch in diameter hail, and the potential for minor flooding from heavy rainfall. Around 30 minutes later, the National Weather Service decided to give the line a severe thunderstorm warning, which was a step up from a special weather statement. Within this alert, the primary threats were expected to be 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts and quarter-size hail. However, also noted in the alert was continuous cloud-to-ground lightning and torrential rainfall. Shortly after the severe thunderstorm warning expired at 10:15 a.m., another special weather statement was issued on the line. Expected wind gusts had fallen to below severe limits, with the new statement indicating the hazards as wind gusts up to 50 miles per hour and penny-sized hail. This alert covered 7 counties, including us here in Clay. With the squall line fast approaching, I decided to head out and try and find a good vantage point to record the incoming storm. Thankfully, the line was coming through at just the right time, as I had an extended break from work. At around 10 a.m., I began to head up Highway 17 and made it to a marina on the northern end of Fleming Island. Here, there's a bridge that overlooks the St. Johns River, and it's elevated enough to see over the tree line. By the time I arrived, the squall line was roughly 20 miles away. Looking back on the footage, I arrived about 25 minutes too early, as I stood recording out to the west in an attempt to see lightning. Unfortunately, due to the heavy cloud cover that morning, I wasn't able to see the actual cloud structure of the approaching squall line, so much of the early footage I took just shows layers of clouds moving past. As the line approached, a few isolated showers would develop in front of it, moving from southwest to northeast. These showers only added to the difficulties recording the incoming line, as it was getting the camera wet and obscuring my view further of the sky. At least when it came to the camera though, I came up with a pretty quick solution that kept it surprisingly dry. Unfortunately, I did not have much luck when it came to recording lightning, however, as it seemed the rate of cloud-to-ground lightning slowed as the line approached the western edges of Clay and Duval County. Whatever lightning was occurring was likely happening just under the storm, embedded within all that torrential rainfall. At around 10:36, I noticed the sky quickly began to darken, which you can see in the clip on screen. I had taken a screenshot of the radar a few minutes prior, and it's pretty clear to see that much of the heavier action was happening up to our north in Jacksonville. With what looked to be the leading edge of the line approaching, however, I decided to pack it up and head back down to the marina. At around 10:40, I was back at the marina and set up the camera just along the water. Here you can see the leading edge of the squall line ominously moving closer and fast.
Oh man, how's that for a view? It's coming.
Initially, I planned just to record the beginning of the line moving in, out in the open, then move back to my car. But at the last moment, I made the decision to move into a nearby bar hut that was sitting along the water. Here, I would write out the whole squall line.
Yeah, how about this?
As the leading edge of the line reached me, I got hit with some pretty hefty wind and rain. Wind gusts reached a peak of around 25 to 30 miles per hour according to my anemometer right as the leading edge of the line came in. Generally though, wind gusts range from only about 15 to 20 through a majority of the downpour. There would be some rumbles of thunder, but outside the occasional flash, no visible lightning from my point of view. It was honestly kind of hard to hear what thunder there was due to the sheer roar of the rain coming down.
Alright, this might be a bit of a stupid idea, but do what we gotta do. Got the anemometer, it's getting windy. I ran my way down the bridge. Here we go. Here she goes. I use my hat for this. Oh man. Yeah. It's like right on our doorstep. Not a lot of lightning in this part. That's more up in Jacksonville, but here comes the wind. we go. Oh, man. Comes. See that water down there? It whips up good. Man. Getting some 12 to 13. Oh, there's some thunder. A little bit closer, but oh well. Man. There we go. 17, 13. Starting to blow in my shoes a little. 17 again. Hearing some rumbles of thunder. Cool. Yeah, there we go. 18. Alright, looks like we're about in the thick of it. There's a little bit of lightning occurring ahead of us, not too much. Guess we'll see what happens if we get to see anything. I feel like it might be a little hard to see. Yeah, it seems like a lot of the strikes have been embedded in all this rain. It's not really hitting outside too much in the storm. Ooh, dude. That looked a little close, wherever that was. Yeah. Wow. That is just torrential rain. Looking at the radar, the worst of the wind is behind us, so I'm not really expecting too many more big gusts. Man. I hate to be driving on the bridge behind me right now, man. Wow, man. I'm still hearing rumbles of thunder out there. No thunder. And looking on radar, there's a lot more lightning happening to our north and to our south, but not really as much in front of us, or around us, which, I mean, probably for the better. It's been about 6 months since I've gotten lightning on camera. But we still got the rest of tonight and tomorrow morning to go. This is only round 1 for us. Oh man. Everything is soaked. My clothes, the tripod, my bag. Alright. Sounds like the rain is starting to relax a little bit. Looks it too. I can actually see a little further out. Starting to be able to see the tree line across the river again. Quite the big convective complex that formed. They got a special weather statement section from the coastal Duval area down to like St. John's. Now this is kind of like a squall line, but believe it or not, this isn't like how it's been for the rest of the winter, where this is a cold front. We're actually south of a stationary front right now. The cold front won't be here till tomorrow morning. So we're in for quite a lot of stormy weather today and tonight. We had a real brief downpour this morning with a few rumbles of thunder, but this is the first real thunderstorm we've had so far today. I mean, see, that thunder sounds like it's starting to come from the south. That's where a lot more of the strikes are happening back towards home. But again, I mean, like, with a storm like this, it's pretty hard to see anything. You got to be in the thick of it. Being on the outskirts didn't really work like I thought it would. Uh-oh. That looks kind of close. That flash. Yeah. I don't know. I try turning the camera this way. See what happens.
After the worst of the squall line had passed overhead, I started to hear more thunder coming from the south. I turned the camera in an attempt to see lightning, but only kept seeing flashes with admittedly loud rumbles of thunder.
I'm seeing flashes now, and they feel pretty close. Yeah. Feels like the rain is finally actually relaxing now. Lightning sounds like it's coming from behind us, but I'm not going to stand out on the bridge. I'm good. Okay. That sounded nasty, dude. Again, I'm not sure if, like, there's really much to see from here, especially with the tree line right there, but it sounds close. I'm cold. Ugh. Camera's starting to run a little low on battery, and it sounds like most of the action's starting to wrap up, so I'll give it a few more minutes and then maybe hit back. Hold on. Let me try moving the camera. Not really the best view in the world, but yep, I saw the flash there. Yeah, man. That southern portion of the line's picking up. Another severe thunderstorm warning for the coastal region where the heaviest part of the wind was. Looks like mostly Duval and St. John's County. Ooh. Uh-oh. I feel like that's gonna be loud. Yeah. I probably could get a better view if I went and stood by the bridge, but I'm gonna be honest, I really don't want to stand outside when it's this close. I'm already like half exposed under here. Ooh. Okay. That was like almost immediate. Woo. Hold on. I'm moving it back this way. I don't know. That is like really close. You're in thunder within like 5 to 10 seconds of the flash, so guesstimate it's about 1 to 2 miles. All right, battery's getting kind of low. I think I'm gonna wrap it up and get moving.
The line continued to remain rather punchy even after it had passed overhead. As I mentioned in the footage, a second special weather statement would be issued as the line was just beginning to move in, covering a majority of Clay County along with eastern Duval and most of St. Johns County. The wind threat remained the same, however the hail threat was reduced down to pea size from penny size. A second severe thunderstorm warning was also issued on a particularly gusty portion of the line, mainly affecting southeastern Duval and northern St. Johns County. The final alert for the squall line would be a special weather statement at 11:16 a.m., going until noon. Here, the wind gust threat was lowered to 40 miles per hour. By the noon hour, the squall line had officially cleared the first coast region, moving offshore and weakening significantly. Aside from a few scattered showers, things were pretty quiet around the area for a few more hours. Starting at around 1:30, a cluster of showers and thunderstorms began to develop along the Big Bend region and began to move eastward towards our area. I kept my eyes on the storm, but admittedly I didn't feel too confident in it being anything significant. As I've come to learn during the cold season, typically once the first big wave or line of storms moves through, it's pretty unlikely you'll see another big storm in the same day. However, this cluster did try to get its act together for quite a bit. Just after 3 p.m., when the now lone storm cell south of the Florida-Georgia line was moving through Columbia and Union counties, a special weather statement was issued on it. Nothing major, just the main hazard being wind gusts of around 40 miles per hour. However, the alert was fairly expansive, covering 8 local counties, including western Clay. By the time the cell was approaching the northwest corner of Clay County, it had weakened and shrunk dramatically and was no longer producing lightning. The storm dissipated by the time it reached the St. Johns River, and that was the end of notable thunderstorms for the day. Conditions remained pretty quiet across the first coast for the rest of the afternoon. This was until around 6 p.m. when a large area of stratiform rain had begun to move over southern Georgia and extreme northern Florida. By 8 p.m., this area had become much wider and more well defined, with some heavy downpours beginning to work into our far western and northern counties of northeast Florida. Throughout the rest of the night and into the morning of March 10th, waves upon waves of heavy rain would move across our entire viewing area. Most of the heaviest rain stuck out to our west and to our north along Interstate 10. Again, this is likely due to the stationary boundary near I-10 and the approaching low-pressure system out in the Gulf. Between 10 p.m. on the 9th and about 6 a.m. on the 10th, numerous rounds of rain showers and the occasional downpour moved over Clay County. However, there was not much in the way of thunderstorms. A flood advisory was issued for northern portions of Clay and southern Duval around 4 a.m. due to the rainfall totals beginning to pile up, with more expected to be on the way. We weren't the only ones, however, as a total of 17 flood advisories would be issued across our viewing area between midnight and 10 a.m. on the 10th, along with an additional 7 being issued the evening prior. Again, the rainfall was the main impact of this whole storm system. However, that does not mean that no stormy weather occurred in our area on the 10th. In total, 28 different special weather statements were issued across our region between midnight and 10 a.m. on the 10th, with most of those being for embedded thunderstorms with gusty winds. Towards the morning hours, mainly as the low pressure system was beginning to approach our region, there was some severe weather. Our first notable thunderstorm on March 10th happened within the far southern counties of our viewing area. At 6:18 a.m., National Weather Service Jacksonville issued a special weather statement for a cluster of thunderstorms that was just beginning to approach the southwestern portion of our viewing area from the Big Bend region. This cluster was set to move over Alachua, Marion, and Putnam counties, with the main hazards being wind gusts up to 50 miles per hour and half-inch in diameter hail. The cluster was also moving pretty damn fast, hauling its way to the northeast at 60 miles per hour. As the system was approaching Putnam County around 7 a.m., another special weather statement was issued, maintaining the wind threat but dropping the hail threat. As the storm started to move through Putnam County, it began to pick up steam. A portion of the cluster was given a severe thunderstorm warning at 7:33 a.m., with the primary hazard being 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts. Just 3 minutes later, the storm was given a tornado warning, with the alert stating the source was radar-indicated rotation. Looking at the velocity radar, a couplet can be seen for a brief amount of time to the south of Interlaken and Palatka. This was likely the mesocyclone of the severe thunderstorm, as no tornado was reported in the days following the storm. It is worth noting that Putnam County is quite far from the KJAX radar, with the area the tornado warning was over being around 60 miles from the radar. This means the radar beam is around 5,000 feet up in the air, so whatever rotation the radar was seeing was a bit high up off the ground. But with the storm moving towards the most populated town in Putnam County, along with the rotation being deeply embedded within heavy rain, and this was all happening during the early morning school, work, traffic rush hour, I'm sure NWS Jacksonville was just issuing the warning as a better safe than sorry sort of thing. Thankfully, the storm ended up clearing out of Putnam County and eventually the rest of our region altogether without causing any reported severe weather or damage. The last notable storm of the day on March 10th occurred a bit closer to home than the previous one, though we unfortunately didn't really see much action ourselves at home. At 8:12 a.m., the National Weather Service issued a special weather statement on a storm moving into Gilchrist and Alachua counties on the southwestern side of our viewing area. Hazards were listed as wind gusts up to 50 miles per hour and pea-sized hail. Similarly to the last storm in Putnam County, this one was also moving really fast, hauling off to the northeast at 60 miles per hour. The storm would get another advisory at 8:31, as it was passing near Gainesville and Alachua County, with the same hazards being listed. By 8:46, the storm was just on the western edge of our county and was given another special weather statement. The storm was looking to cut just across the center of Clay County, meaning we were likely to have it pass right overhead. At around 9 a.m., I stepped outside to try and record the storm. There was definitely lightning occurring somewhere within the storm, as we heard plenty of consistent rumbles of thunder with some louder booms, along with seeing the occasional flash of lightning. But we didn't end up seeing lightning strikes from where we were.
Alright, hello everybody. It is March 10th, 2025. Right now we are looking at a storm that is approaching from our southwest. As I've probably talked about in the video already, a lot of the thunderstorms we saw, other than the ones I say morning, have been a bit underwhelming in our area. Mostly just some rumbles of thunder, not really a lot of lightning strikes being produced with these storms. The big story has mostly been heavy rain. But right now, we're under a special weather statement for what will likely be the last heavy downpour, maybe thunderstorm we're going to see in this 2-day streak of wet weather. Looking at it on radar right now, it's about 10 miles away, and it has a special weather statement on it for 50-mile-per-hour wind gusts and pea-sized hail. I don't know if we're going to see either of those, but I figured I'd come out and record because I didn't come out and record the storms earlier because they weren't really doing much. They didn't have any advisories. There wasn't much lightning with them. But considering this is the last one we'll probably see, and it seems like this might be the best chance of seeing some more notable conditions, I figured I would. I'm hearing some rumbles of thunder. Again, I don't know if we're actually going to see any lightning, but the storm's still 10 miles away, so we still got a bit to go. Yeah. Some good rumbles of thunder from in there. Looks like there might be some more. Oh, maybe. Honestly, I don't know if it's going to be. See that line? Yeah. The highest reflectivity is over towards Middleburg. I think it's probably, if the furthest one that likely has hail, it's probably going to pass. But we'll see.
The storm quickly flew right past us, with the majority of the heavy rain and potentially hail occurring to our west over Middleburg. By 9:15, the storm was just getting ready to move out of northeastern Clay County when it was given its fourth special weather statement. It was absolutely flying by this point, moving northeast at 70 miles per hour. I already was not intending on chasing the storm due to how fast it was previously moving already, plus having to deal with a combination of school and construction traffic at that time of the morning. But with it moving at 70 miles per hour, there was no way I would have been able to catch up to it or get in a decent position to film. Shortly after the special weather statement was issued, a severe thunderstorm warning ended up being issued on the storm as it crossed into Duval County. Here, the hazards were listed as 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts and quarter-size hail. Despite all of the advisories and warnings, there were no reports of severe weather or any hail from the storm. However, taking a look at this radar screen here, it's pretty clear to see why that was a consistently noted hazard in all of the alerts. This is a radar product called vertically integrated liquid, and in layman's terms, it depicts the concentration of moisture within the updraft of any given storm cell. Higher values, which appear in orange, red, and pink, indicate the likelihood of there being extremely large raindrops, or more importantly, hail, within a thunderstorm. Like all radar types, this alone is not enough to say if there was or is hail within any given storm, but it is something that's worth keeping an eye on when the radar shows it. What I find notable about the scan is for just how long the radar indicated the presence of higher moisture content within the storm, with it peaking just as it crossed the Clay and Duval County border, which coincided with the severe thunderstorm warning being issued. Although the storm system we saw on March 9th and 10th did not produce too many big thunderstorms, it absolutely fulfilled on its main advertised threat, which was the widespread heavy rainfall. Taking a look at a wide view of the radar estimated rainfall totals for our area, it's pretty clear to see that all of our area got in on some much needed rain. You can also note the general southwest to northeast orientation of the heavier splotches of rain, which is consistent with how the storms moved throughout the event. The heaviest rainfall around our area generally occurred along Interstate 10 and north into portions of southeastern Georgia. Again, this was forecast well ahead of time, and they hit the nail on the head. A heavy swath of 2 to 3 inches of rainfall fell from about Wellborn on a northeastern path through North Florida and parts of southern Georgia, reaching to the beaches of Camden County in Georgia. Another heavier band occurred in Charlton and especially Ware County, where a band of almost 4 inches of rain fell between Fargo and Folkston, seen in the yellow shading. Locally, here in Clay County and into parts of Putnam and St. John's, rainfall totals were lighter, ranging from around 1 to 2.5 inches. Now, an area that really got sloshed with some heavy rain was further out to the west in the Panhandle. This area was closer to the incoming surface low, and all that increased lift helped develop more consistent rain and heavier downpours. Radar estimates areas near Tallahassee picked up almost 9 inches of rain over the prior 2 days. That's quite a lot for a winter storm system, and just goes to show how waterlogged the atmosphere was across Florida in the lead up and duration of this event. The storm system we saw on March 9th and 10th was quite an interesting one. While it definitely wasn't the most intense or impactful one we've seen across our area, it was still interesting in its own ways. Between the repeating rounds of rainfall to the early morning squall line on March 9th, it was the most impactful system we had seen so far across our region in 2025 up until that point. I hope you enjoyed my analysis of the stormy weather we saw in our region on March 9th and 10th, and if you did, consider leaving a like and subscribing if you haven't already. It lets us know that you enjoy what we do here, and it helps the channel reach more people. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.